Have you ever noticed that the smartest people you know often make the most baffling decisions? Think about it. Why do high IQ individuals lose money in the stock market, get hurt in relationships, and feel lost when choosing their careers? Here's a shocking reality. Recent research shows that 95% of high-intelligence individuals make the same critical mistakes when making important decisions. Today, I'm going to expose this intelligence paradox and give you a scientifically proven solution that could completely transform how you make decisions. What we're covering today will blow your mind. First, I'll reveal 3 cognitive traps that specifically target smart people. Then, I'll explain why traditional decision-making advice simply doesn't work for high IQ individuals. Next, I'll share a 5-step decision-making framework backed by research from Harvard and Stanford universities. And finally, I'll walk you through real-world cases of expensive mistakes made by brilliant minds. By the end of this video, you'll completely change the way you make decisions. And here's what I want you to do. In the comments below, share an example of the smartest person you know making a terrible decision. Trust me, you'll understand exactly why it happened after watching this. Let me start with something that might surprise you: the intelligence paradox. This is the phenomenon where higher intelligence doesn't necessarily lead to better life outcomes. In fact, it can sometimes lead to worse decisions. Consider this. Nobel Prize winners have notoriously bad investment records. Brilliant CEOs make strategic blunders that cost billions. Academic superstars often struggle with basic life choices like career, direction, or relationships. Why does this happen? The answer lies in a fascinating psychological principle. There's actually a positive correlation between overconfidence and intelligence. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to overestimate your abilities in areas outside your expertise. Your brain literally tricks you into thinking you're better at everything because you're good at some things. Research from the University of Pennsylvania found that people with higher IQs show increased activity in brain regions associated with overconfidence when making decisions. This means your intelligence isn't just failing to help you, it's actively working against you. Have you experienced this yourself? That moment when you knew the right answer logically, but still made the wrong choice? That's the intelligence paradox in action. Now, let me break down the 3 major cognitive traps that specifically target intelligent people. The first trap is the confirmation bias amplification effect. Here's what makes this particularly dangerous for smart people. You're incredibly good at finding evidence to support whatever you already believe. Your intelligence becomes a weapon against your own judgment. Take the case of a renowned hedge fund manager who lost $2 billion because he became convinced that a particular market trend would continue. Instead of questioning his assumptions, he used his brilliant analytical skills to find more and more data that supported his original thesis. Every piece of contradicting evidence was dismissed as an anomaly or explained away with complex theories. Neuroscience shows us why this happens. When we encounter information that challenges our beliefs, the brain's threat detection system activates. For intelligent people, this triggers an even more sophisticated response. Your brain doesn't just reject the conflicting information, it actively seeks out ways to discredit it using your analytical abilities. Here are 3 questions to help you identify your own confirmation bias. First, what would it take to change my mind about this? Second, who would disagree with me and why? Third, what evidence am I ignoring or downplaying? The second trap is the curse of knowledge. This is when your expertise makes you unable to imagine what it's like not to know what you know. You assume others have the same information and reasoning capabilities that you do. Think about technical experts trying to explain complex concepts to regular users. They skip over fundamental steps because those steps seem obvious to them. Product managers design interfaces that make perfect sense to them but confuse actual customers. Teachers assume students understand concepts that took them years to master. This curse doesn't just affect communication, it affects decision-making. When you're evaluating options, you unconsciously assume everyone else has access to the same knowledge you do. You make decisions based on information that others don't have or can't process the same way. The solution is a three-step perspective-taking process. First, identify what you know that others might not. Second, imagine you're explaining this to someone with no background in the subject. Third, ask yourself what questions a complete beginner would have. The third trap is analysis paralysis. This is perhaps the most painful trap for intelligent people because your strength, your ability to analyze, becomes your weakness. When faced with a decision, you can see multiple angles, potential outcomes, and complex interconnections that others miss. This sounds like an advantage, but it often leads to endless analysis without action. You keep gathering more information, running more scenarios, and finding more variables to consider. The psychological mechanism here involves perfectionism and decision anxiety. Your high standards make you want to find the perfect solution, but complex real-world problems rarely have perfect answers. The fear of making a suboptimal choice paralyzes you, and ironically, this paralysis often leads to the worst outcome of all, missing the opportunity entirely. The cost of this trap is enormous. While you're analyzing, markets change, opportunities disappear, and competitors take action. Sometimes the second best decision made quickly is infinitely better than the best decision made too late. The solution is to set decision deadlines and stick to them. Once you have enough information to make a reasonable choice, usually around 70 to 80% certainty, force yourself to decide. Now, let me give you the 5-step decision-making framework that can help you overcome these traps. Step 1 is emotional reset. Emotions cloud rational thinking, but here's the catch. Intelligent people often think they're being rational when they're actually being driven by emotions like pride, fear, or frustration. The 10-minute cooling rule works like this. When facing an important decision, especially one that triggers strong feelings, step away for exactly 10 minutes. Take a walk, do breathing exercises, or simply sit quietly. This gives your prefrontal cortex time to regain control over your emotional centers. For example, imagine you receive a job offer that makes you angry because it's lower than expected. Your first instinct might be to reject it immediately or write a harsh response. The 10-minute rule prevents you from making a decision while emotionally compromised. Step 2 is assumption challenging. This is where you become your own devil's advocate. List out your key assumptions about the situation, then systematically challenge each one. Use decision tree analysis to map out different scenarios. What if your assumptions are wrong? What if the opposite is true? What if there are factors you haven't considered? Here's a practical exercise. For every major decision, write down 3 assumptions you're making, then spend 5 minutes trying to prove each assumption wrong. This isn't about becoming negative, it's about testing the foundation of your decision. Step 3 is multi-perspective analysis. Use the 6 thinking hats method. Look at the decision from different angles. Consider the emotional impact, the logical pros and cons, the creative possibilities, the potential problems, the optimistic outcomes, and the process itself. In business decisions, this might mean considering the perspective of customers, competitors, employees, and shareholders. For personal decisions, consider your future self, your family, and your deepest values. Set a time limit for this analysis, maybe 30 minutes for major decisions, 5 minutes for smaller ones. The goal isn't perfection, it's comprehensiveness within reasonable bounds. Step 4 is small-scale experimentation. Instead of making a full commitment, test your decision on a smaller scale first. This is like running a minimum viable test for your choice. If you're considering a career change, take on a project in that field before quitting your current job. If you're thinking about a major purchase, rent, or borrow a similar item first. If you're evaluating a business strategy, pilot it with a small segment before full implementation. This approach reduces the cost of being wrong while giving you real-world data to inform your final decision. It's particularly powerful for intelligent people because it satisfies your need for evidence while managing risk. Step 5 is execution and adjustment. Here's a crucial principle. Act when you have 80% confidence, not 95%. Waiting for complete certainty is often a trap that leads to missed opportunities. Build feedback mechanisms into your decision. How will you know if it's working? What metrics will you track? What milestones will indicate success or failure? Most importantly, commit to learning from mistakes. Quickly set review dates to evaluate how your decision is playing out and be willing to course correct if needed. Remember, most decisions are reversible or adjustable. Let me walk you through 3 real-world cases that illustrate these principles. Case 1 involves a major tech company that spent 2 years developing a product nobody wanted. The team was brilliant, PhD-level engineers and data scientists with impressive track records. But they fell into the curse of knowledge trap. They assumed users wanted the same level of complexity and features that they, as technical experts, found valuable. They dismissed early user feedback as coming from people who just didn't get it yet. Their intelligence made them more confident in their assumptions and more resistant to contradictory evidence. The result, they burned through $50 million before finally admitting the product was fundamentally flawed. The lesson: collective intelligence can create collective blind spots. Case 2 features a legendary investment manager who built his reputation on contrarian thinking, and deep analysis. His downfall came when he became too confident in his analytical abilities. He identified what he believed was a major market inefficiency and bet heavily against it. When the position moved against him, instead of cutting losses, he doubled down. His reasoning was brilliant, his analysis was thorough, but he failed to account for how long markets can remain irrational. The psychological factor here was overconfidence bias. Amplified by past success, his intelligence had served him well before, leading him to trust it too, completely, in a situation where other factors mattered more. Case 3 involves a PhD student facing career choices. She had multiple job offers in academia, industry, and consulting. Her analytical nature led her to create complex spreadsheets comparing every possible factor: salary progression, work, life balance, intellectual stimulation, geographic preferences, and long-term career prospects. The more she analyzed, the more factors she discovered to consider. She spent 4 months in analysis paralysis, ultimately losing 2 of her best offers because she couldn't decide in time. Her intelligence, meant to help her make the best choice, prevented her from making any choice at all. The breakthrough came when she applied the 5-step framework. She reset emotionally, challenged her assumption that there was a perfect choice, considered perspectives beyond her own analytical mind, experimented by doing informational interviews, and finally made a decision with 80% confidence. Now, let me share some practical tools you can use immediately. First, create a decision checklist for important choices. Include questions like, am I emotionally calm? Have I challenged my key assumptions? Have I considered multiple perspectives? Can I test this decision on a small scale? Do I have enough information to decide, or am I procrastinating? Second, use a cognitive bias, self-assessment. Rate yourself on common biases like confirmation bias, overconfidence, and anchoring. Knowing your personal weak spots helps you guard against them. Third, Keep a decision journal. Record important decisions, your reasoning, and the outcomes. Review this monthly to identify patterns in your decision-making. You'll start to see which types of situations trigger your cognitive traps. Fourth, build a personal board of advisors, people who think differently than you do and aren't afraid to challenge your ideas. Intelligent people often surround themselves with other intelligent people who think similarly. Diversity of thought is more valuable than similarity of intelligence. Let me summarize the key points we've covered. High intelligence doesn't guarantee good decisions. In fact, it can work against you through overconfidence and analysis paralysis. The three major cognitive traps that target smart people are confirmation bias amplification, the curse of knowledge, and analysis paralysis. The five-step framework provides a scientifically backed solution: emotional reset, assumption, challenging, multi-perspective analysis, small-scale experimentation, and execution with adjustment. Most importantly, practice beats perfection. It's better to make good decisions quickly than perfect decisions too late. Starting tomorrow, use this framework for every important decision you face. This isn't just about decision-making techniques. This is about changing the trajectory of your life through better choices. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share an example of a smart person making a terrible decision. Let's analyze what went wrong together. Which cognitive trap do you think affects you most? If you try the five-step framework, come back and share how it worked for you. What other decision-making challenges would you like me to analyze? Leave a comment and let me know. If this video made you rethink how you make decisions, subscribe to my channel for more content like this. If you found it useful, hit the like button. It really helps me reach more people who could benefit from this information. Share this video with friends who you think need to improve their decision-making. Next week, I'll be diving deep into the relationship between emotional intelligence and decision-making. So, make sure to ring that notification bell. Remember, intelligence isn't meant to prove you're right. It's meant to help you make better choices. See you in the next one.